The podcast that you're listening to is being presented to you with the cooperation of the SJ Network. If you're a person who needs a publicist and you want to appear on podcasts, contact Stephen Joyner at s-j-network.com. Let's get on with the show.
Today's episode is about the podcast Bee Gees and Me. Dudley, aren't you a big Bee Gees fan?
Yes, I'm a huge fan. Maybe I should start the show quoting their lyrics, like I started a joke, which started the whole world laughing.
Yes, you could. But if the Sherpa wrote that joke, you probably wouldn't get that result.
Attention, rebels of the Sherpalution. Today's podcast is being brought to you by Audible. You can get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/Sherpa. There are over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. And now Mr. Bruce will lead you into the Sherpa Chalet. As a reminder, throwing water balloons, or people, off the cliffs is strictly prohibited.
Welcome to Too Many Podcasts, the podcast about podcasts. Now, podcasting from the Sherpa Chalet on Mount Podcastia, here's your host, Jim, the podcast Sherpa.
Hello there, Rebels, and welcome to another episode of Too Many Podcasts. You know where you were, and you know I am Jim, the podcast Sherpa. How you doing? Let me ask you a question. How you feeling? You got a little night fever? Are you staying alive? Well, I just got to get a message to you, Rebels, and that message is, it's a theme week.
It's theme week. It's theme week. It's theme week.
And what other theme week would we have with such musical references? It's got to be about the Bee Gees. That's right. It's Barry, Robin, and Morris Gibb. And we are talking to a guy named David Fedor, and he hosts a podcast called Bee Gees and Me. And this was a really interesting conversation. This guy just loves the Bee Gees, and he's a real fan and a real collector. And you can really hear the passion that he has for listening to their music. And that's really exciting to hear when somebody's excited about anything. And it also makes for a good interview. So let's have a listen. In the event of something happening to me, there's something I would like you all to see. It's just this interview that I once did with David Fedor of Bee Gees and Me. Hello there, Rebels. We are in Studio 54 of the Sherpa Chalet. Well, it's not Studio 54 anymore. It's now a broom closet, but it's a really nice broom closet with really cool lighting. And I've got a guest here who's got a really interesting podcast. It's called Bee Gees and Me. His name is David Fedor. Hanging out on the East Coast, we get to talk collectibles and the Bee Gees and lots of music. And he's right here. How you doing, David?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for coming on the show and welcome. So the Bee Gees, now you are actually younger than me, but your obsession with the Bee Gees from a band from the 60s actually started around the 90s, right?
Yeah, so that's one of the weird things about my story is that I discovered the Bee Gees later in the history of the band. A lot of the Bee Gees fan base were disco dancing through the 70s or even earlier. I discovered them as a teenage boy in the suburbs of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in the year 1993. So for the longest time, I was the only person that I ever knew who loved the Bee Gees. And it was literally just the Bee Gees and me. So that's how I kind of came upon this Bee Gees and Me thing where I didn't have anybody to talk to. I tried to get all my friends to become Bee Gees fans. And just recently, within the past couple of years, reaching out and connecting with people online has been like one of these, oh my God, why haven't I been doing this? The internet has been around, David. You should have known. And I'm finally getting to trade stories and talk with people and share our love for the music of the Bee Gees. So it's been exciting.
So what did it at first? What was the thing that kind of flipped the light bulb on? Was there anything specific?
There's a very specific story and one that I tell a lot, which is fun. It was a Wednesday. I remember it was a Wednesday because I had a football game to play that night. I was on the JV team and we had our games on Wednesday evenings. And because of the bus schedule and getting back to the school in time for the football game and whatever, my mom came and picked me up from school. And I was being driven home. I was riding the back seat. My mom was driving. My sister had shotgun. And I hear this song come on over the radio. And it instantly captured my attention and instantly grabbed my ear. The pulsing beat, the shrieking falsetto vocals, it was the most amazing thing I'd ever heard. So I leaned forward and I said, "Mom, do you mind turning up the radio? I want to hear this song." And her and my sister turned around, "Oh, shut up. Oh." They didn't. I like to tell the story that way. They hate when I tell the story that way. But regardless, the radio station did not get turned up. I had to get up on my knees and turn around and position myself with my ear on the speaker of the back bench of the 1991 Oldsmobile Cutlass Sierra as we're driving down a major highway in my town at dangerous speeds. I'm risking my life to find out what this song was and hear this song. Turns out it was their 1993 single at the time called "Paying the Price of Love." It was off their album that had just come out, Size and everything. And it was as far from disco as what they had. So it shocked me when I found out that it was the Bee Gees. I'd sat there and listened to that radio station until they played it again. And that's when I heard the DJ say it was the Bee Gees. I was like, what? Aren't those disco guys? Oh, this is what? And it blew my mind. So then I started going and hunting down albums and getting all the different things. And this was pre-Napster. This was pre-internet. I had to actually go to stores and go to flea markets and thumb through records to pull old, vinyl records and play them and discover that this Bee Gees band has been around since the early 60s, recording music in Australia and England and now America. And from there, it became, how do I get more? How do I learn more? How do I get more of my friends to like this? So I'd make tapes and give them my friends and make them listen to it and try to convert them to fans and stuff like that. And I don't really know why, other than the music captured my ear and my heart and my soul. And it's been a downward spiral ever since.
I guess it just kind of resonated with you. That's what happens, I guess, especially whenever you like a band, there's always that something about them that clicks in your brain and it has your undivided attention.
Well, with the Bee Gees, it's definitely their harmony. So for those who might not know, the Bee Gees are brothers, Barry, Robin, and Morris Gibb. And the three of them, when they sing in those harmonies, it's one of the most magical vocal arrangements that I've ever heard. Only other brother acts, I think, have compared, like the Beach Boys and groups like that, like some of the Temptations and the Mills Brothers and things like that, are people that the Bee Gees have said that it inspired their sound because of that harmony, the 3-part harmony. And it's ridiculous and it's addictive and it's great.
Did you kind of go and start buying their back catalog before you listening to the newer stuff first, just to kind of get a whole feel for it? Or you just kind of started from that point and then you kind of built it up on both ends?
I tried to get as much as I could get my hands on. So CDs were the format of choice. So I went to the record stores, the Sam Goodies, the places in the mall, and would buy their records. And again, this is, before internet, where you could just download and have hundreds of songs at your disposal. So when I would get a new album, I would listen to that over and over and over again until it became, repetitious or whatever. I would get vinyl records at the flea markets for $1 or a quarter, even for some of them, depending on the quality. So yeah, it was slow. So those first couple years, it wasn't like today where you could have a Wikipedia page and learn their biography. You had to get the old books and you had to read them and you had to get the old albums and either play them in a physical format. And I would have my portable CD player in my car listening to it as I drove back and forth to work. And some of my fondest memories of those late 90s days were when I graduated high school and I'd drive to my day job at an amusement park. and the summer heat would be rolling in the window, and I would hear the Bee Gees off the CD. That's just, it's magic. It's something I connected with and was a soundtrack to my life those years, those formative years, and it left an imprint on my DNA.
It's funny. I have a large music collection too, and I know with like listening to vinyl, when you start playing an album over and over again, you get to the point where you can time the next song with all the little in between the songs.
Yeah.
And you can know like when that first note is going to hit, and it's like, boom, it's right there.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's nothing like, I just went out and got Barry's Greenfields album. He just put out a country album at the beginning of this year with a bunch of different country artists, and they all did country covers of popular Bee Gees songs. And they had a vinyl copy and CDs and things like that. And they had a special green vinyl and a metallic silver vinyl and regular black vinyl. And I had to get them all. And then I was playing in my ratty old record player. So then I had to go out and buy a better record player because I was like, I can't play these good new vinyl records with my dull needle. So yeah, it helped me rediscover, and then I started playing all my old vinyls again. There's something magical about the physical, and even reading books too, having that tangible thing in your hands, flipping a record, putting in a CD in a tray even. It's a nice experience.
It's funny because people always say, well, streaming is the way to go. You got to subscribe to a service. The physical element of it kind of disappears. You don't get to enjoy like the liner notes. I always used to like to read liner notes and look at the lyrics and
the lyrics and the photos.
Yeah.
And like look at, like, I know your listeners can't see, but you could see behind me. I have bookshelves full of records and books and
he does
all these things. And right over here, I'm pointing off the way. I have a closet that's full of DVDs and Blu-rays. And downstairs in my basement, I have a giant Tupperware container full of VHS tapes that I refuse to throw away. Because how many times do people freak out online about, oh, they pulled Office off of Netflix. What am I going to do? Guess what? I got Office on my on DVD. I don't have to worry about it being taken off Netflix. Sure, I'm going to stream it when I can, but I never have to worry because I spent $5 to get a used copy of season 7 of The Office. And every season after that sucked because Steve Carell left, and it doesn't matter. So.
Did you ever get to see them in concert, or it never really worked out?
Oh, see, this is one of the sad things. It never worked out for me to see the three brothers, Barry, Morris, and Robin, in concert. Like we were talking about, I joined late when I was a teenager. Mm-hmm. In the 90s. They rarely performed live by that point. They had a few big shows. Probably when I was listening to them, they probably had maybe 20 live appearances that I could conceivably have gone to. They did a lot overseas. They did their one night only tour. They did, one huge show on every continent. And that was kind of like one of their farewell tours or whatever. But I was either in high school or college. And it wasn't feasible for me to actually go, not knowing that I would have to. Like if I knew that Morris was going to unexpectedly pass away at the age of 53 and the year 2003, I'd have made a point to go see them perform live. He died early, and they never toured again. I did see Barry perform in the year 2014 for his Mythology tour. And he toured with Morris's daughter, Samantha Gibb, and Barry's own son, Stephen Gibb. And they had, the full, Barry's band behind them. And I definitely made sure, I was like, all right, I missed seeing them all perform. I can't go my whole life without seeing at least Barry alive or performing live, because Robin had passed away by that point too. So I spent a lot of money to get third row seats right in the center, and yelled. It was me and a bunch of ladies who loved them in the 70s, and they were all singing along to the music. And I was like, I came to hear Barry sing. But it was great. It was a fun experience. I waved and yelled until he waved back at me. So, and then I was like, all right, that's good enough. I bum rushed the stage at the end of the night to try to get a pick or, some kind of like, did he drink out of that water bottle? Give me that water bottle. It might have berry DNA on it. But I got the set list that was taped to the floor. So that was cool. And that was as close as I got to seeing him perform. It was a great show. It was really good. And hopefully with the success of this new country album, he's been talking about maybe doing some things in Nashville whenever stuff opens up. So I don't know if that would be later this year or possibly next year. He's doing a volume 2 of his country album stuff. So you bet I'll be driving to Nashville if he goes live again. So
when you were saying that there's like a country vibe to the new songs on the new record, I remember there's one of their older songs called Rest Your Love on Me.
Yeah.
And that definitely had like an old country Nashville kind of feel to it.
They have a lot of roots. Like they grew up in Australia. So it was kind of outback-ish. They had that kind of country upbringing. In the late 60s, early 70s, before they went disco, they definitely experimented with sounds because they had a lot of those hits with the ballads, How Can You Mend a Broken Heart and To Love Somebody and how, all those other orchestral type, Beatles-esque type songs. But then everything started changing. The music started changing. Their albums weren't selling the same. So then they started experimenting with a couple different sounds to try to find where the direction of their band was going. And they definitely tried to get an American sound. They were looking at country music. So like, alternative tracks, you'd have some kind of weird Beach Boys sounding song, you'd have a country song, you'd have an R&B song. And it wasn't until they moved to Miami and totally fully embraced that R&B lifestyle that they settled on that disco sound when everything changed. So hearing Barry talk about how much, admiration and respect that he has for country music and getting to perform with these country music stars, he's giddy again. He's having fun again. He's experimenting and evolving his sound again. And I think this is probably the most fun he's had since, his brothers passed away, that he's getting to make music again. And the album went number 1 in the UK and went number 1 in Australia and charted here in the States. It was a huge success. Their HBO documentary came out in December. So, this is a big time right now for Bee Gees music and Barry and getting more press and more respect and more exposure. So that's fun.
They kind of got a really raw deal with the disco era in a way, because it's funny when you listen to some of that dance music now, and you're hearing bands that were using orchestras, they were using actual brass. They weren't all synthesizers. It wasn't like a very flat kind of unemotional. It was party music. That was what it was all about. Yeah. I think probably what happened so much is that because it hit so big so fast, they oversaturated the airwaves, and everybody had to climb on board. And that's what happens with every fad, right? It gets beaten to death till people get tired of it. And then like, okay, no, we don't want anything to do with that. But they at least, they came out survivors, really, when you think about it.
The strength of what they did, they were songwriters first. They wrote quality songs. If you listen to those songs, there's much more depth to it than if you were to listen to Disco Duck, or if you were to listen to, some of those other Don't Rock the Boat or YMCA or whatever. Not that those are bad songs; those are fun. Well, no, Disco Duck is definitely a bad song. But a lot of those other disco songs were disposable because they weren't made to be, sit to and listen to and analyze and digest. They were made to go out and dance to. They were made to have repetitive beats so that DJs and the discotheques could cut between these songs and people could dance and sweat and drink and snort their coke and have a good time. That's what disco was about. And I think, the documentary had a good explanation of the backlash, and they focused on the Disco Sucks movement and the disco demolition that they had, where they blew up the records and
Comiskey Park.
Yeah, and it was a lot of things rooted in racism and homophobia and all this other stuff that was going on that, even to this day, we're still feeling reverberations from. But I think it was a lot of that negativity that fueled that, because they showed in the documentary, it was like, bring disco records to blow up inside Kaminsky Park or whatever, and they were like showing all the records, and it was like, these aren't even disco records, these are just black records, these aren't disco records, these are just dance records. So it was kind of this weird thing. And yeah, the Bee Gees, with, as you said, oversaturation, they were the cover boys for this. They were the easy target because they had more hits than anybody since the Beatles. They had 5 songs in a top 10 for the first time. Only Beatles have done that, them and the Beatles. They were the ones being played all the time. They were the ones on the cover of Saturday Night Fever. They were the ones that were the easy target. And yeah, it pushed them underground, and they didn't do anything as the Bee Gees until the late 80s. And but they had a lot of success doing stuff with other people and writing songs for other artists, and they kind of focused on and had their second career as songwriters to fall back on.
As you're saying this, I'm thinking about some of the bands that were popular around that era, and a lot of them didn't really have a face attached to it. You knew what their songs were. Casey and the Sunshine Band, it was a guy named Harry Casey. Could people really know, off the top of their heads, what he looked like? Did they know anybody in the band? No. You knew Barry, Robin, and Morris. They became the face. They were on billboards and all the teen magazines. I guess it becomes a blessing and a curse, right? You become you become the symbol for something that maybe you might not want to become the symbol for.
Right. And what's the alternative? They're struggling musicians for the rest of their lives. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to perform and be underappreciated, even though the backlash caused them to be underappreciated. But, at least they were underappreciated millionaires.
I want to ask you a little bit about your memorabilia.
Okay. I'm a collector. I like saving things. I like collecting things. I think it was being born or not born, but raised in the 90s, where comic books and baseball cards, everybody, from the generation before me was talking about how their baseball cards were thrown away. So you have to save baseball cards because they're going to be worth money. They're only worth money if the majority of them are thrown away. So everybody from my generation that saved their baseball cards have, worthless baseball cards now. But that fear of throwing things away was instilled in me. So I became a collector. I have comic books, I have action figures, I have, things. And of course, as the Bee Gees are one of my biggest passions in life, it carries over to that. I have, all the records of all their albums. I have, doubles of copies and things. But the stuff that I like is the weird things, the stuff that's still in original packaging. Like, anybody has a ratty old phonograph that they played their 45s on, but the phonograph that I have is still in the original box that it was sitting on the shelf with. And when you open that up, that record player is mint. I still have the AM/FM radio in the bubble wrap. I still have. There's this poster that comes with a bunch of markers, and you color it in. It's like color by number. I've only seen a few of them even sold, and they've been colored in and scribbled all over. I have one that's original in its original shrink wrap with the markers still with the caps on and all that stuff. So it's like, that's the sort of stuff that, as kind of this historian, I want to get the good stuff. I want to get the buttons that are still in the package. And part of the fun of that is then showing it off on my Instagram account. And then people could say, oh, I remember that. And I used to have one just like that. And then we'd talk about the Bee Gees and how great they are. And it's a way to connect with other fans. So it's a lot of fun.
Do you have a prized possession out of your collectibles?
It kind of like, that's like asking somebody what their favorite Bee Gees song is. I don't want to pick one because then I hurt the feelings of the other one. I have,
I'm going to ask you for your top 5 anyway, but
top 5 songs. Oh
yeah.
Can I swear on this podcast? Some of those ones that I mentioned are fun. Like I like collecting the 1993 album that first exposed me to the Bee Gees, size and everything. So I have, a pressing of it from Russia on vinyl. I have a pressing of it from Brazil. I have a copy of it from Japan. I have a bootleg cassette of it that came from India. I have one from Belgium. So I would say the Sizes of Everything stuff is probably my favorite, and the singles that came off of that, it's something I enjoy.
Is there any other music that you like to listen to, or is it just
never.
No?
The rest of it is, eclectic, I guess. It's more pop. I definitely lean towards pop. I'm a huge Brandi Carlile fan. I've seen her in concert probably 4 or 5 times. I love ABBA. I like Milli Vanilli. Yeah, Milli Vanilli predates the Bee Gees when I was listening to music. So I have some of their collection that's stored right up in here. But it's and then like I have random songs that I play when I work out or I go cycling. I'll have my earbuds in and I'll discover new music and it's just random stuff. But it's usually some kind of weird music that nobody else likes. So, which is funny because I'm going to go on a tangent. So I apologize. You could cut this part out if it gets too long. In the early 2000s, I was hanging out with a nice variety of friends from different backgrounds, and I was in my single life living in Pittsburgh, and I realized that I needed to expand my musical horizons. So I started this group with my friends called the Disc Poets Society. And once a month we got together, we picked a theme for music compilations and we burned CDs full of music to exchange with each other. We would bring covered dishes over, so like each month somebody else hosted. And, we did this maybe throughout the year, like for maybe 1 year. And by the end of the year, we had like a living room full of people together, and we're all sitting around and eating and drinking and having a good time and listening to music and telling each other stories about music. And it was a way for me to, of course I slipped in as much Bee Gees as I could without making it seem too obvious, but I also was able to get exposed to a lot of different bands and a lot of different things. And I'm pretty sure that's where I discovered Brandi Carlile. One of my friends put Dreams on one of their mixes. It's that sort of thing that, and I'm trying to incorporate a little bit of that into my podcast, which we could talk about later too, where I get people on to the show to talk about the Bee Gees, but then also to talk about other groups as well, because I think it's probably healthier for us to be well-rounded. Bee Gees fans are a obsessive bunch and a dedicated bunch.
You're helping me segue right into my next question, David.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about your podcast, Bee Gees and Me. You've had some interesting interviews and some people that have a connection to the group.
Yeah. So I'm reaching out to as many people as I can who have met them personally or worked with them and things like that. My first guest was Diane Steinberg Lewis. She was an actress and played Lucy as Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds in the Sgt. Pepper's movie. And it was fascinating talking with her. She's so wonderful. And hearing not only the stories about her life, but then, that few months that she was able to be on set with the Bee Gees, and that was it sounded like a great time. I spoke with an executive producer of a tribute album who put out a tribute album for the Bee Gees, and he worked with a dozen to probably upwards of 20 different musical groups to cover Bee Gees songs, and it was his passion project to put this tribute album together, and it was awesome to hear his story. I spoke with a photographer who spent a year in the homes of the Bee Gees and being on the road with them and being at Sgt. Pepper's, the movie, taking pictures of them and hearing her stories. And some of the ones that haven't aired yet are things like other fans or other things that I'm looking a way to connect something to the Bee Gees. So I had a good friend. I was on his podcast. He has a Bruce Springsteen podcast. So I talked with the Bee Gees on his podcast. I brought him on mine to talk about Bruce Springsteen. And then we listened to a bunch of music together. And that one's coming out in a couple. Nope, that one would have come out already. So
you remember the time shift.
I remember the time shift. So yeah, eventually I want to talk with more fans and hear their stories, because people love hearing and sharing their own personal stories. So hopefully, I could talk with as many interesting people, and we're all here to celebrate the music of the Brothers Gibb.
And there is definitely a lot to celebrate about it. They've got a longer career than most people realize.
Yeah, from 67, at least nationally. They released a few albums before that in Australia, all the way up to the early 2000s. And then Robin was still making music up until 2012, and Barry's still making music to this day. So there's over 50 albums to speak about, and lots of fun things. So and I post some fun pictures on my Instagram account at BeGeesandMe, and I'm on Twitter, and there's a Facebook group, and everything's at BeGeesandMe.com. It's I just want to connect with as many people as I can, because of spending so long feeling ashamed of being the only Bee Gees fan that I knew. I need the love and support.
You're not alone anymore now.
I'm not alone anymore. It's fantastic.
Okay, so since we're talking about your podcast, what are some other podcasts that you like to listen to?
Besides this one that I'm on right now, I love listening to yours. My friend, Setlusting Bruce, is his Jesse Jackson's podcast. He has a Bruce Springsteen podcast, and he's a good listen. In terms of the bigger ones, or the national ones that have been coming out since this pandemic started, a lot of people have been going podcasting because they can't make TV shows or whatever. There's one called Real Friends, Fake Doctors with Zach Braff and Donald Faison, and I love Scrubs. And I recently started watching it again during this pandemic. And then I discovered the podcast and started listening to the podcast, and then having to go back and then watch the episodes again. And then I got my wife to start listening to the podcast. And now she and I are going back and watching again. So probably within this year, we've watched 9 seasons of Scrubs. Well, 8 seasons of Scrubs. The last season of Scrubs doesn't count.
You don't like those last seasons, do you?
No, because all the stars usually leave. They start trying to introduce other characters, and it's just not the same. But that one is great. And then there's My Brother and Me is fantastic. There's a couple wrestling ones that I listen to. So and the one bad thing, I've been laid off since the pandemic and stuff, and I'm not in the car often at all. And I always used to, commute to work. It was, a good 35-minute commute to work, and I'd be able to do a podcast a day. But now I'm home with my kids, and I can't listen to podcasts as often as I could, so I don't get to anymore. But Wrestle Me is a good one.
So I know you kind of touched on some of this stuff, but we do have a portion of the show called Shameless Self-Promotion.
Shameless self-promotion.
Ah, okay.
And this is where you can let everybody know where they can follow you on social media, or if they things that they may want to check out to learn more about the show.
Sure. My podcast is called Bee Gees and Me, and the website is begeesandme.com. I post videos online, and have unboxings and closer looks at some of the merchandise and memorabilia, some of the albums and things like that. And then, in addition to the podcast, where I have conversations like this, but with other people doing most of the talking instead of me, or at least I try to. And that's on Apple and Spotify and Google. What's fun, it's on Spotify as well, so that I could do listening parties. And I'll have guests on, and we'll listen to music and actually talk about the songs and things like that. So that to me is a joy, because this is all about sharing music. So Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at BeGeesandMe, and that's where everything can be found.
So there you have it, folks. So if you're staying alive, I've been doing a little bit of jive talking with my friend David Fedor. David, Bee Gees and Me is the name of the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
We're on the internet thingy at Sherpalution.com.
And now it's time for Sherpa Suggestions.
Since the Bee Gees' musical career spans from the 1960s through the late 90s, early 2000s, I figured I'd give you a list of some podcasts with some classic music on it. We have, of course, disco mixes, the Absolute Radio 70s podcasts, Retro Redoctopus, The Yacht Rock Show with Eddie Gans, Dance Floor Memories with Patrick Hawkins podcast. That's got a lot of mix of classic disco, if you guys like that disco stuff. And The Encore Show, the best of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. The Hitman USA 70s, 80s disco mixes. And finally, the Get Ready Breakfast Show, bringing you club classic tracks from the late 70s to 2019, covering all aspects of dance music. So break out that polyester suit and point to the ceiling like you're John Travolta and... Ooh, well, I'm pointing to the ceiling, there's a spider there. Ooh, get back. Ew. A very special thanks to David Fedor of Bee Gees and me for coming on down to the Sherpa Chalet. Thank you so much, David. What a fun interview that was. It's nice to hear people who are so passionate about the music that they love. I love it too. And you know, I've got a music podcast too. If you're listening to this show on Spotify, check out some episodes of Too Many 80s Songs. That's the little mini podcast that I did with Mr. Bruce, if you'd like to check it out. So what's going on next week? We've got a really wonderful guest. Her name is Deborah Driggs, and Deborah is a former Playboy Playmate, and she's coming out with a book later on this year, and it's about her life and a lot of life advice, and her story is really amazing. It's really a true testament to resilience. I think you're going to enjoy that story, and I think you'll like the episode. Definitely the type of stuff that people can get behind when you want to cheer for the underdog. And Deborah is just a lovely person, and I really had a great time talking to her. I found her story really fascinating. I hope you enjoy it too. So that'll be on next week. And in the meantime, Mr. Bruce, if you don't mind showing everybody the door, and I'll just say, Sherpalution. Oh, I hurt myself. Could you get me an ice pack when you come back? Thank you, sir. See you guys next time. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Too Many Podcasts. Please disperse. You can go home now. I said you can go home now. Viva la Sherpalution. Viva la Sherpalution. Oh. Yeah, I'll come back now, you hear?